Hello, founders. Welcome to Startups.com. We are live. We have a fantastic show for you today. I'm joined, as always, by Q and Jen, part of our team here at Startups.com, and our guest advisor and founder, fellow founder, he is here. His name is Jacob Dyke. I'll introduce himself in just a moment. Before we get to that, I just want to give a quick shout out to us, and that has to do with Startups.com, and we have a podcast, in case anybody hasn't seen this yet. It's called Startup Therapy. It's hosted by our CEO, Will Schroeder, and our CMO, Ryan Rattan, and they sit around and basically talk. If you don't know, our CEO and our CMO, they have been around. They have done multiple startups, unicorn companies, all that good stuff that you want to be listening to. But the great thing is they talk about all the topics that normal founders, we don't sit around and talk about. And they really get in deep and like to call it the no BS version of a conversation just for all of you founders out there. So if you are looking at topics such as what's my startup worth in an acquisition, and you want to hear the straight goods, check out the podcast. And as always, check out all the other content material. We have so much good things, so many good things happening over there on Startups.com. I am going to introduce my friend. We have been advising startups, helping startups at Startups.com for how long has it been, Jacob?
I think I've been an advisor here for about a year and a half now, but been a part of the community for about a year and 9 months.
All right, going on 2 years, and it's been fantastic. Do us all the pleasure of learning about you. Introduce yourself. What do you do, and how do you help founders here at Startups.com?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. So I'm Jacob Dyke. I'm the founder of Anchor Coaching. So I do executive coaching, and shortly we'll be doing a peer advisory group coming this fall. And basically, I help founders and executives improve their productivity. That seems to be where the founders really have a difficult time prioritizing and just finding out or figuring out how to be their best. And that's where I serve the best. So at Startups.com, I do the founder focus group or founder focus executive focus group. We have group coaching. We basically get together, do a roundtable of what's keeping us up at night, and just help each other out. Try to come up with action items that actually drive business outcomes.
And what got you started in executive coaching in terms of saying, because that's usually a pathway where you have to have something personal involved. It's not something that you sort of get up and you're going to high school and you say, I want to become an executive coach. Like, I don't hear that. What got you into executive coaching in the first place?
So Ed, I'm strange, but I've actually wanted to be a coach for quite a long time, but it was a different kind of coach. So in college, I really wanted to be a high school football coach. That was my dream and my passion. I jumped into that and realized it was not conducive for the family that I wanted to create. But I always had that heart of wanting to grow and develop people. I was one of those weird guys that always did Madden franchises, and I traded away everybody just so I could draft and develop my team. And so I've always had that heart and mind. But it is a really personal journey for me. I started off in the coaching and education world, and then found a technology startup and fell in love with entrepreneurship. But I was really struggling with finding where I belonged. Like, what is it that I was going to do? And I had a friend encourage me to find a coach. And so I started being coached for about 2.5 years and made progress in ways that I never thought possible. And he really inspired me to go get trained and then ultimately start coaching my own practice.
By the way, I tell my family the only job that I would leave my family, abandon all my career progression for, was an NFL coach, an NFL general manager, or someone who sat at a sports desk doing analysis. I don't know what it was, but those are the only things that I would completely change direction. But it is a very common story, Jacob. I am certified as an executive coach as well, but I did that because I was coached and experienced the coaching. And then I said, I have to learn this and I want to help other people. What do you think is the main benefit for executive coaching founders? And let me couch this, because founders are worried about all other different things like traction, raising money, building the product, you name it. But you and I both know the benefits of coaching. What would you say to the founder, early stage, saying, you know what, I don't know if I need a coach. What's your pitch?
Yeah, I think that the greatest benefit is clarity. Like, on a day-to-day basis, there's just so little time to get everything done. And just figuring out what is it that I need to do that's going to drive the most powerful business outcomes for me. What is it that's going to drive it or move the needle for me? That is where the bread and butter of coaching belongs. And it's custom. It's directly to you. It's not this one size fit all thing. It's something that is very deep and personal, and really helps you remove those roadblocks from improving.
Let's make it real for everybody else out there then? If you say clarity, give me some examples, like here at Startups.com. We don't have to give gory details and spill the tea and release names, but how have you seen results for our founders here at Startups.com?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ed. I think, especially in our group coaching sessions, a few of the founders have really found that they're being pulled in so many different directions. Even today on the cohort today, we were talking about how there are so many good things to work on, but when it came down to it, even though a founder's interest was in more of the statistics and building side, the thing that was going to make him successful was finding business. And so he was in charge of doing those business development activities. He has co-founders, but he was the one who was focusing on that. So he is going to have to go and tell his co-founders, hey, I am going to let you guys run this other side so that I can focus on driving business. And so that's where the clarity comes in.
A lot of times founders get caught up in this whole pursuit or having to decide between what is better and best. So that's where I see good clarity starting to happen. And yeah, just in general, having someone from an outside perspective, pointing out some blind spots, or just talk through your different options, because when you're trapped in your mind, just having that coach, because how I define coaching is I'm the one who steps off the field and allows that founder to go out and do it, right? If I'm on the field doing it, well, I'm a co-founder or might as well be the CEO. But I'm going to step off field, make sure you have everything that you need and to see that. So let's share some stories. What results, who have you seen that just has completely changed? They've come to you and said, Jacob, thank God for you. Bless your heart, man. I've totally changed. Here are the results that I'm experiencing.
Yeah, there have been a couple of instances where there are founders who are coming in and they're working on either their side hustle and trying to make it a full-time thing, or they are just figuring out what their project is. And they've actually had to realize that they have to step away from their project so that they can have a space to generate more income to be able to come back to it later, which is really a really interesting outcome. I've had a couple of founders do that. And then most recently, I have someone that I'm coaching or CEO that I'm coaching that is working through how to drive their mission and vision in a company that has a lot of turnover. So how do we re-engage a workforce to be able to actually stick together and build the thing that they wanted to build, and finding that clarity of what is the next or the thing that they have to work on. And what they found was that they didn't have enough people that understood their target audience the best. Then that was the thing of we actually have to hire people that have knowledge in this space to bring to our team. And that's how the team's going to grow, really understanding, or the company's going to grow understanding the target audience better. So 2 instances there.
Perfect. Great examples. Very common. You see this all the time here at Startups.com. All right. One last question for me. And then if you are in the audience and you're watching us, you can feel free to use the chat, especially use the FAQ. No, it's not called the FAQ. It's called, what's it called? The Q&A. I get all these letters mixed up. Use the Q&A. But Jacob, my curiosity to you is, in your mind, and we might have to debate, arm wrestle or fight or Rochambeau each other, if anybody knows what that is, in terms of what is the difference between you, an executive coach, and me as an advisor? How do you and I coexist in this world as we are fighting for precious resources? How do you and I fight for what is rightfully ours? Just kidding. How do we collaborate together for startups?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Ed, you are the North Star. That's kind of how I see you. You just
here we go.
You just tell people how it is. You lay it out to them okay, you are here, boom, boom, boom. These are steps that you need to take to get to here. Whereas I take a little bit different approach of helping the founder understand where they are and what are the roadblocks preventing them from going from where they need to be. So it's kind of two different processes to do the same thing of helping them get to where they want to go. You're giving that direct feedback, and I'm helping train or develop or pull out the insights from within. So I think that's how we coexist together.
Perfect. Could have said it better myself. The reason I appreciate you, Jacob, and the other coaches who help us is it takes a lot of load off of us as advisors. The benefit of me being able to just go in there, diagnose, assess, and say, all right, I'm the doctor, and I say, okay, you got to do this, 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 and this. But then all the other people who come around and they support the founder and say, all right, yeah, Ed was pretty blunt, but let's process through how are you doing with that? because for me to change gears between this is what you need to do and then all the way to this is how you process it, I'm not always paying attention. Like what makes me good at my job is I'm able to just say what I see. And like you as a coach, I'll point out blind spots, but they're more like technical blind spots. You know, I heard someone say on a podcast, like, if you want to be funny, a lot of times the reason people are funny is you just interject and you say things that no one would expect. But at the same time, while you're being funny and you're using that superpower, you might say something that really hurts someone's feelings and super jarring. It's the same thing that happens with me, is that I will just tell it like it is, and I won't necessarily be in the mindset to think about maybe there's a personal thing going on, or maybe they're hemorrhaging time, or there's other factors involved. And so to be able to send them to you, Jacob, and say, all right, Jacob, just figure out what they're doing. And then you and I have triangulated back and forth. You've given me information and we've shared. And that is how great founders are made. It's like a village raising a child. What do you think?
Yeah, I love that, because you're the, so I guess you're the daddy. Ed is now the daddy of Startups.com. No, I'm just kidding. No, Ed, you are leading and helping people by giving them direct feedback. And it's kind of like, okay, what do I do with this feedback? And they come to my group and they can kind of chew on it a little bit and figure out, okay, how do I take this next step to actually do what Ed's telling me to do, or even understand what Ed is telling them to do. So.
Yeah, no, that's really great. Well, you and I have collaborated. We're collaborating right now on a real intense project. So I always appreciate you. Okay, let's do this. Remember, audience members, if you have questions, just throw them in the Q&A box and the chat. Jen is going to be watching out for that, making sure that we answer questions for everybody. But we've had Q. She is collecting all the information and then looking out for different questions that might be helpful for us to talk about, just to spark the conversation. Q, what's our first question?
Thanks, Ed. Our first question is, how important is vision for a founder, and what is the best way to develop one for your startup?
Ooh, Jacob, take it away.
Oh man, Ed, this gives me chills, because this is what I'm working on a day-to-day basis. So I've just created a guide that directly actually helps you figure out what your vision is. And to me, vision is so important, because you got to know where you're going before you even start moving on a project. You know, it's kind of like if you're going on a road trip, you know, are you going to the beach or are you going to the mountains? You got to know which way you're going before taking off. So for me, vision is that first step where, okay, I'm going to the beach. And then kind of your mission is how are you going to get there? What is it? What is the vehicle or the path that you're going to take to actually get to that destination?
Let me share something for the founders here. And just looking at the audience, I know some of you are raising funding. Vision is so important, internally speaking. And Jacob, you've probably seen this, where the vision is going to keep that fire going. It is the wood. You might have a moment of inspiration and you might get passionate, and that's like the spark. You're passionate about solving a problem. But a vision for your life, the lives of your users, the people that you're going to help, that's what's going to keep you going up late at night, in the middle of the night, when things are really hard. And also for fundraising, this is a little inside baseball. I don't like it when founders lead with vision right out of the gate. I don't like all that fluffy stuff. I want to hear the problem and the solution. Just give it to me straight, right between the eyes. But then I want to know on the back end, how do you see the world changing? And I do test if the founder has the vision to keep them going, because it'll be a 10, 20-year journey. And if you don't have that vision keeping you up at night, just keeping you warm and energized, then you are going to get distracted. You're going to peter out. And as an investor, or any investor is going to tell you, long-term, like this is a long-term marriage. Just like, you know, Jacob, you're a family man just like me. If I don't have a vision, like I may love my wife, but that's not enough. And I know this is probably going to, you know, we have Jen about to get married, you know, and thinking, oh my goodness, like, what are you talking about? Love is not enough. All right. Love will not keep us alive. It is not going to happen. One of the secrets is that I have a vision for my marriage, what my marriage looks like and how my kids are affected because our marriage is the way that it's supposed to be. I have a picture of the future. And it's the same way that I approach startup vision. And I say, can I see the picture of the future? Because it gets hard. My passion is not enough. Money's not enough. All the extrinsic stuff's not enough. The team is not enough. I have to be just completely involved in growth. I'm going to bring an example up. You know, everybody, Mark Zuckerberg got $1 billion offer to sell Facebook, $1 billion offer to sell Facebook from Yahoo. Every single one of his team said, take the deal, take the deal, take the deal. And he said, no, not going to take the deal. Why? Because he had vision. He said, Facebook is meant to be more than what Yahoo is going to do with it. And guess what? I believe, someone can fact check this for me. I believe that his entire team quit. And he was like, no. And now look at what Facebook is now. Like, we're talking billionaires multi times over. I forget what their last valuation was, but it's something absolutely ridiculous. If he would have been short-sighted in his vision and not committed to it, he would have sold too early. And that's super important. Jake, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's so powerful to have a vision that keeps you on track. That's the thing that I think it's the most important is your why. That's why you're existing. It's why your company exists. It's why you exist, moving towards that vision. And without that vision, then you are going to take the path of least resistance because it's there. I think I wrote a post about this the other day. I went running out of town. There were a whole bunch of hills, and I just kept running down the hills because it was easier. And then I reached my goal of my distance, and all of a sudden I looked back up at all those hills and realized, oh, I've actually got to get back home. And so I had much further to go because I just kept taking this easy path. There are things that are worth doing that are hard. And without vision, if I had planned a little bit better, maybe I would have just done a loop, and it would have been better in the long run for me to run up a few of those hills.
That's great. You lost me at running, but I'm going to take your word for it that this is a practical example. Q, what else we got? What's another question?
How can founders identify the early signs of burnout in themselves and their teams?
Burnout, early signs. Sometimes burnout creeps up on you. Typically, you don't recognize that you're burning out until you're literally at burnout. So an early sign would be that you're not getting rest. I think that's step one, that you're not sleeping. And I think step two is that other people are asking you if you're okay. If you have people that are asking you if you're okay, it might be time to check in and see if you actually are okay.
Wow, that's actually a good one. It makes sense because, you may have a lull in performance, but that just might be a factor of other things. But if you're not taking care of yourself, but at the same time, Jake, I'm sure you heard this, and this is the thought that goes through my mind. It's the same thing. I'm dealing with high blood pressure right now. And my doctor says to me, by the time you feel the effects of high blood pressure, it's too late, right? So I'm going to correlate that, compare that to what you just said. But isn't it okay to pull overnighters, like these long days? Isn't it like part of hustle culture where we are saying, you know what, it's a badge of honor that we're not sleeping. It's a badge of honor that we are burning the candles on both ends and the middle. What would you say to that prevailing mentality, that psychology that seems to seep into startups?
I'd say that there's a time and a place for it. Sometimes sometimes you have to. Sometimes there is a sprint, a short period of time where you are going to stay up late or you are going to work really hard, but then you have to take the time to actually take care of yourself and recover from that. Because if you do it for too long, you're not going to be able to function, and all that work that you put in isn't going to matter. So I would say that while it's a part of the culture, you just got to be careful. And I think that there's ways that you can do it, be extremely productive without losing yourself in the process.
How do you do that? Like, let's give some examples. Let's say we've detected burnout. People are asking us, and you think to yourself, you know what? I think I'm burnt out. What would you do?
Step one is identify areas that I can cut to give me a break. Who can I automate, or what can I automate, delegate, or eliminate to get some stuff off of my plate? Focus on my number one and two priorities every day, and just be able to have people support me in that. Now, if you're a solo entrepreneur, it's harder. It is. There's things like AI or automated systems and things that you can use. I'd say that step one is there. Step two is actually taking time off. And I know, again, it's really hard as a founder to do that. But if that just means taking a weekend off instead of just continuing to burn through the weekend, do that. But I personally try to take rest during the day. It doesn't mean that I'm necessarily taking a full day off of rest, but just incorporating it into moments of my day, making it a lifestyle instead of a thing that it's like, oh, I have to wait until I get to a vacation or a weekend to rest. So go on walks. We're talking 15-30 minutes. You're going to be more productive after the walk anyway. So adding things that give you energy throughout the week is, I think, really important.
You can also disrupt your patterns. Like, one of the ways that I've been dealing with it lately is right now, like this set right here, my bedroom is right there. Like, I'm totally spilling the tea on this. My bedroom's behind me, and it's because I've got kids that are still at home and they're the teens, and my wife uses a whole bonus room under herself. my kids need to have their own room and the family room and the main dining room, which you don't have a dining table in there anymore. And so I've just chosen to say, let them use all that space. But if I get up and I roll out of bed and I just go right at my desk, then I face potential consequences of just running out, like the gas runs out of the tank. So what I've been doing is I've been saying, I'm going to start my morning by going downstairs, taking my vitamins, hanging out at the kitchen table, and I just disrupt my patterns just a little bit. And that's something that you can do, not just incorporate rest, but then also disrupt some of the normal things that you're doing. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up was, it's a great concept. Jacob, I want you to comment on this. The ability to say no is so important. To know, K-N-O-W, what your no's are, N-O's, you must, or to know what your yeses are, you must know what your no's are, right? But here's the thing. Once you start, and I hope people listen to this, and I'm on the back nine, everyone, so I've experienced multiple times of burnout and these cycles. But once you say no, the number of your no's, as they increase, the quality of your yeses will also increase, right? Yeah. And Brenda here in the audience, I saw it in chat, just popped up. The ability to say no and not having to qualify. Now, Brenda, thank you so much for having that comment. Now, let me go off the beaten path just a little bit. One of the ways that I've had to protect myself in the position I've been in situations where every week, everybody wants to meet with me, right? So I'll go to a conference or I'll give a talk. I'll share, I'll be in the public spotlight. And the worst part of this, my introvert coming out, they come out and they want to have lunch with me, all these things. And I had to say no because I can't say yes to everyone. But then if I said no, I'm booked for something else, or no, I'm doing this, they could question me and judge me. And they sort of look at me like, what, am I not as important, or all these things, or they do that. So then I learned, just as Brenda's talking about, and Brenda, I'm sure you have tons of experience with this, is just to say, no, my schedule does not allow it. Awkward silence, let them walk away. That's it, right? Because you spend so much energy and you can burn yourself out by trying to justify that. And the more I say no, the things I say yes to, I automatically do better at them. And we talk about productivity and focus. That actually does more than compensate for the stuff I've said no to. And that's what I've learned is I say no to so much more, and I just say yes to things I know that I can have a lot of impact and good ROI. What are your thoughts? Like, you got to be seeing this happen all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that is the natural state of the founder, is to have too much on their plate and have too many people asking them for time. So, how do you do that? You have to prioritize. You have to. And sometimes it has to be as direct as creating rules for yourself of, I will say no to everything except for this, this, and this. And, sometimes you have to go through periods of that. It doesn't mean that you have to do it all the time, but at least for stretches of time when you're really busy, then yes, it is important to protect your time, because going back to your vision, how are you going to achieve your vision? You actually have to have the time to focus and work on your highest leverage activities.
Let's make this super real for you founders out there who are raising money or are building a startup. You should be saying no to everything except two things: building your product, talking to your users. The thing that burns founders out right from the beginning, because it keeps stacking up, is saying yes to go on podcasts. Ironically speaking, just even this, but running around, going to those events, those quote networking things where you feel really great because you're talking about it. In the beginning, those are all a big fat waste of time. And just like Jacob said, the quality, like you're not going to be able to execute against that vision if you're saying yes, and you can get distracted so often. So your no's have to be super clear, which is pretty much everything else except build your product, talk to users, and then you add in one more yes, tell investors about it and how you're doing the first two if you're going to be raising capital. So that's the way. We're just going to make this very applicable for those of you who are raising funds, as we do here at Startups.com. We want to help out. Q, let's do one more.
What specific productivity frameworks do you recommend for founders who feel overwhelmed by day-to-day operations?
That's a good one. I think that, so Cal Newport, who wrote the book Deep Work, he has a really great one that I think is a pretty simple one to use. And it's just organizing yourself into activities that are like active or inactive. And so he's only working on one or two activities in a day, and he pulls them once he's complete. So he's completed one big focus activity for the day. When that task is fully done, he moves it to complete, and then he can pull something from the inactive list. So that's one way of just keeping it simple. You can also, if you look at his stuff, he also goes into how to communicate that to a team and put it in a place where people can actually view and see like, oh, he's working on this. I'll contact him when he starts working on my thing. Another one, what is the matrix of the I'm drawing a blank on it. You have the urgent, the Eisenhower matrix.
Okay.
I think that's a great one to check out and use. It helps you prioritize what's the most important task or urgent task to do, but also the higher leverage tasks to do during your day.
You bring
So
up
those were two.
you bring up a good point, because I think first of all is understanding there's a difference between what's important and what's urgent. Lots of stuff feels urgent and you're gonna have to deal with it, but what's important. Now remember, I think that everyone's got a certain amount of stuff that they just have to get done during the day. It's put on your calendar. Like I get up, Jen's my executive operations, so I don't even control my calendar. I get up and I see how cruel or how, benevolent Jen is being on my calendar. And she really doesn't like me for the week. She's just going to stack my calendar and say, take it, right? That's, pretty much how it works. But on other times, most of the time, Jen, I love you. She protects my calendar and puts in all these breaks and knows, because I give her feedback, and she knows schedule the breaks after this because this might be an intense thing or it needs more preparation time. But then the other thing that you have to do is, despite that laundry list, understand the difference between urgent and important. And then just like what you talked about, who is the first gentleman? Deep Work, right? Was the first one.
Cal Newport.
Cal Newport. So I take a similar thing where I say, I have the list of my top 5. So I have the one important thing I need to get done today. That's it. If I go to bed and I haven't done anything else other than what Jen's told me to do, but anything else, I want to get this one thing done. And then when I get that one thing done, I'm going to do the other things that are less important, but not as important. And then maybe I'll get to the 3 things where I feel urgent. So I have lists of 1, 2, 3. But if I go to bed and I've got that one thing done, I sleep really well, despite the fact that I got 100 things, on my list. And that's super important. And I think that as long as you come up with a system to manage your time, and I think that's the main takeaway, what Jacob is talking about, is create a system, find something, and actually try it in your life. What do you think about systems, Jacob? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, systems are where to go. I'm currently trying to use the Cal Newport one. And the biggest benefit is just having a system. It's not necessarily that some are going to be a little bit better than the other, but you get 80% of the benefit of just improving your productivity by just having a system in place. So find one that sounds interesting to you and just stick with it for a while, and you'll see the improvement. It comes pretty quickly. But systems as a whole, you have to systemize or else you will struggle. I have ADHD. I struggle with being distracted, but as long as I'm within frameworks that I've put into place, I tend to be fairly productive on a day-to-day basis.
Where they say in Atomic Habits, it's you don't rise to the levels of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems, right? So you're setting all these lofty goals and systems. I can't stress this enough. All you founders out there, if you do something more than once and it's got more than 3 steps and it involves more than 3 people, you should be creating a standard operating procedure, an SOP to it, and letting everybody know. Now, if you've got other things, like there are unspoken things that me and Jen, once again, system, like, and I kind of talk about Jen a lot and I'm throwing her under the bus on some things, but having someone like a Jen, having someone in your executive operations really helps with that burnout, right? And helps with productivity. So there are things that are sort of me and Jen have worked out where I'll just say, yeah, next time do it this way, and she'll make that adjustment. We don't need to create a standard operating procedure, right? But as soon as we add a third, so now we've added Q, and Q has completely messed up our operations. Like we are talking chaos factor, monkey throwing a wrench and then throwing themselves in the operations, and it's been nuts. And then what we've done is we've had to move to writing things down and creating that, because now we got an exponential growth in factors that can come into play. And so creating that system is so important. And listen, you cannot start this too early, right from day one. If you find yourself doing something more than once with more than 3 people or 3 or more people, and it's got more than 3 steps, write it down. That's the big thing. So that's what I'm thinking about right now. Q, I think we got more time for more questions. Remember, audience, put in those questions into the chat or the Q&A box. Not going to call it an FAQ. If you got questions for Jacob, or you got questions just on your startup in general, I will do general questions. We're going to have this time. We're in that part. But Q, what's another question just to get people thinking?
How can founders transition from being hands-on in every aspect of their startup to becoming strategic leaders?
Systems. You've got to replace yourself. which is really hard, or it can be really hard to do, but you find ways to use systems, automate, and then bring in people that can do the tasks, the manual tasks that you don't need to be doing.
Delegation. But let's nuance this conversation just a little more, Jacob. Okay. Here's what I observe. So one, the founder has to create the strategy, right? So they want to be strategic. But then two, the founder in the early stages has to get in there and do the work. They have to get in there, founder-led sales, for example. All right. Pick up the phone, send a message out to LinkedIn and start talking to users. You are not going to create a system, delegate that in the beginning. It's not going to happen. But then what I find is founders stay and they say, I have to be overall strategist. So I'm not going to bother myself with all that frontline menial stuff. And then founders get used to it. They say, okay, I'm just going to code. I'm just going to get it done. And then they get their round of funding. They have to hire people and they can't get out of it and they can't go into management. So let's talk about those three phases in the beginning. Figure out the strategy. And then second, just get the work done. Like just stop. And this happens to me all the time. And let me tell you, when I hire someone into my operation, I don't want someone strategic. And I'm going to get everybody mad at me. And people want to come in and they want to do strategy. I want to work on the product and I got opinions and I can help you with this. And I say that time is not now. We'll have moments of that, but I just need you to get the work done, right? Because that's what I'm bringing you in for. But then that forces me into the third phase where I have to become strategic. So Jacob, what are your thoughts? Like break down the phases so that people just don't think it's like one answer fits all.
Yeah, no, I thank you for bringing that up. It's, when I first started anchor coaching, I was looking for ways to create systems as a solo founder and trying to automate a whole bunch of stuff and take things off my plate, but I had no clients. So what was the point of me, doing all that stuff? And it was me being too far into the clouds of like, oh, I'm gonna have this perfect system where I don't have to do any of the stuff I don't want to do. The truth is what you shared earlier. What are the two most important tasks at the beginning of your startup? It's working on your product and talking to customers. So who's going to do that? You do. You have to be the one to do that until you get to the point where you have resources and your time is being taken up by too many of these things. Then you can start moving out. So yes, phase one, you got to grind, you got to do it yourself. Phase two is when you start using your systems to remove yourself a little bit. And then I'd say phase three is when you have enough resources and revenue to start hiring a full team to do that work for you.
Systems. I can't say it enough over and over again. I think I saw a comment. Jen, we got a comment?
We have a comment from Hess saying this is very difficult, especially in creative business like game development, but he agrees 100%. Having the wrong people can derail you from your focus. Speaking from experience.
All right. Let's talk about that for a moment. Thanks, Hess, for bringing that up. Creatives. Okay, Jacob, how many creative people have you coached? We got a very creative, Q is probably the most creative member of our team. You got creative people dealing with all the distractions, everything like that. What would you say specifically to creative people, founders who got to get stuff done, but they're creative and they end up going down those rabbit holes? Like I can just imagine doing video games, man, you're so stimulated. There's so many things you could be imagining and dreaming of. I would love to work in that environment. What would you say to them, Jacob?
I think it's you got to create systems. And I hate that that's the same thing we were saying, but you have to create a bubble of time every day to get the stuff that you don't want to get done. Like you've got to structure your day enough to where you can, this is kind of a silly thing because it's hard to structure creativity, but that's what you kind of have to do. You have to structure the time where it's like, okay, this is the time that I know that I am the most creative, and give yourself the space. Don't let yourself be distracted. Let yourself be creative and do that. And then at the other times, block off time to get your grind work done that nobody wants to do. But you kind of have to prioritize or block off your time in those two different buckets.
Not only that, take care of yourself. That if you know you're typically creative in the morning, but you get up in the morning, you're not creative, don't just kind of gloss over it and move it to the other day. There might be something going on that you could have done, like get better sleep or so many other things so that you can maximize that time. So not just block it off, but I would say optimize. I think that's super important. So Jacob, I'm sure you've seen it all. Let's keep going and talk about this article that Q prepared for us in terms of, we like to do like a hot take. And this is for everybody. And this should be fun because it lines right up with some of the stuff that we've been talking about. And so those of you watching in the audience, and if you're watching the recording, feel free to leave a comment. We'd appreciate a like, a comment, a subscribe, and all those things. But Q, what's the article that we're going to look at? And let's have a discussion.
So today, the article that we're having a look at is titled "How Palia Helps Founders Break Down Stigma Around Mental Health." So Palia is a company spun out of a VC fund, and it focuses on integrating mental health and wellness into startup culture. By addressing the mental health challenges founders face, Palia aims to reduce stigma and foster healthier leadership in the startup ecosystem. Their approach basically emphasizes integrative leadership, and it supports founders holistically to navigate both personal and professional challenges. What do you guys think?
Jacob, let me start off by asking you this question.
Yeah.
What challenges are you seeing as an executive coach between founders and entrepreneurs or small business, maybe founders, small business owners, and people working as executives? We know there are different buckets, but what are you observing in terms of how their mental health gets affected?
I think everybody is running hot right now. That's what it feels like. It's like everybody is on edge. The economy isn't great. It's a tough time. So with that heightened kind of space of just what the general macro environment is, on a more individual level, they are pushing and pressing in areas that I would potentially say that they don't have to. What I've really come to realize in my own life is that I've done so many things, like activities and stuff, out of fear, because I really want to get to this next level and I'm not satisfied with where I'm at. So I'm going to push out something and get it out to the community before it's ready. And I'm going to rush to get something done that could actually wait until tomorrow. So what I'm seeing is just a lot of people burning at both ends of not being patient, not taking their time, and putting stuff out there before it actually needs to be out there.
Yeah, and that could definitely be different depending on whether you're working on a startup or you're working in a business. But especially when it's a startup, putting stuff out when you're ready, or when you're ready to take on the mental health challenges. Like I'm about to launch a new product, and I've brought somebody on the team that is going to be handling the comments and everything, because I know that I take a hit to my emotional health. I take a hit mentally when I'm in the thick of that, because I'm so close, my passion, everything. I feel so vulnerable doing that. But let's rip off the Band-Aid. All right. So Jacob mentioned ADD. So I'm going to bring in Q and bring in Jen. All right. So without, again, going into gory details, and I'll go first. In terms of mental health, so I suffer, and not saying that everyone has to be as transparent. I get to be the most obnoxious person here. But I suffer from social anxiety. So during COVID, being locked up, I developed panic attacks. So it's gotten a lot better. So I have social anxiety because I'm a double introvert. You can go look up what that means. And in general, that has affected me from going on a public and all those things. I much appreciate, these types of environments, right? And then the other things that it's affected has been things like my health, the high blood pressure, the eating, the emotional eating. I eat my feelings all the time. And, so everything's cycled in that way. But I would say that's been my main struggle. On top of which, I'm neurodivergent. So growing up in the environment which I grew up in, I suffered brain damage. I found this out later on, where an entire part of my brain doesn't work. Like I haven't been connected, but there are just certain things that don't go through my mind. My mind just does not work a certain way. For example, I don't have an inner monologue, right? And it's a superpower in some sort of ways. And then I have something called synesthesia, which means when your senses get crisscrossed. So, some people, when they listen to music, they see colors is what happens. And that's synesthesia, right? And this was shown to me by a doctor, and she was explaining this to me. And I was like, oh, that's totally crazy. So I have this as well. So I've got all this cocktail of stuff going in my head. And I've spent years trying to manage and making sure that I got the systems in my life, I got the support, to deal with it, right? And my wife has been a total champion and a hero. So those are the things that I struggle with, and they affect me as a founder. And they affect me differently as a founder than they would if I was an executive at work, or if I was running a small business, such as our gas station. I'm partners in a gas station, just south of us. Let's just, kind of create this environment where we can all share. Q, what would you say are your mental health hangups or different dysfunction that you've got that affect your work? And again, only share what you're comfortable in sharing, but I want to create an environment where founders there know that we can talk about it.
How much time we got, Ed? I think I think one of the biggest things is, being neurodivergent as a creative. I think that's pretty common for most creatives. And I think that some of the side effects that come with that really impact my day to day is like, for example, recently, the past 3 weeks, I have been barely sleeping. And I'm talking like I'm up sometimes until 8 in the morning. And I have like a nighttime routine and everything. Like I put away my phone, I read before bed, but sometimes it just is what it is. Like I'm just up all night. And obviously that impacts your quality of life, your emotional regulation, just your general performance, right? So I would say that there's a lot of things that come with something like being neurodivergent. And I think it can also be a gateway to even depression if you're not sleeping properly, right? It impacts your hormones as well. So I would say that that's probably my biggest struggle over the past couple of weeks.
I'm pretty sure I've been clinically depressed a couple times in my life too. Let me just say something super quick. I'm glad, Q, you couched it the way that you did. We are not saying neurodivergence is a mental health challenge. What I am saying is your neurodivergence, and that's just the way of saying your brain just is not neurotypical. Like your brain just doesn't work the same way. And I agree, creatives, especially creative people, I find some of the most neurodivergent people on the planet, right? But I am saying neurodivergence can affect your mental health because it's misunderstood, because there's a stigma. Like, and I'm glad that there are startups like we're talking about, like Pilea, I think was the name of it. And I'm glad that we're addressing it because a lot of founders have gone the wayside. One of the stories is Tony Hsieh of Zappos. He is a visionary and all these things. His mental health went down the drain after he sold his startup to Amazon.com. And it is a very, very well-known story amongst us founders. Very, very sad. We're talking drugs, getting connected with the wrong people, like just really, really, really sad stuff for someone who was like one of my heroes. Like I read his stuff and I followed him, type thing. But let's keep this conversation going. I got a big question for you, Jacob, after this. So I want you to load up. Jen, what about you? How has mental health, dysfunction, stress, any of those things affected your work?
This has turned into a session of the startup therapy.
Exactly.
And I think this is fantastic. I would also play on the side with Q, kind of same thing. If anyone has seen Inside Out 2, they introduced an anxiety character, and I'm pretty sure they based it off of me. That the way that anxiety processes and works and is shared in that movie is essentially what I've dealt with. I can focus on one little thing and it ends up, I make it something 10 times bigger than what it should be, which then results in not sleeping because I'm anxious and I'm thinking all the time. Not sleeping turns into not having a good attitude sometimes if I'm cranky, tired, which then I tend to push people away and just want my own time, which then ultimately turns into just sabotaging when I think that I need to be alone. Sometimes I actually need like my partner or someone to just talk to me and vent to, but I tend to actually sabotage that. That's what I would say.
Self-sabotage? Oh yeah, sign me up. That's great. I'm under Wikipedia for self-sabotage for sure. You're right there. Okay, so Jacob, Mr. Executive Coach, we're coming to you. So a founder comes to you and says, I'm struggling with this, and like I think mental health more, I'm depressed, but I can't just take a vacation. I can't just turn it off. Like I got to do these things. How would you tell a founder? Maybe we got a founder that's going to be listening to this and is going to say, all right, I need an intervention or something like that in the future in a recording. What advice would you give?
I think first and foremost, as a coach, I'm not a mental health. I'm not a therapist, but I would actually encourage them if they were feeling like they had depression, if they were feeling that much anxiety, I would encourage them to go to a mental health professional and work with them to help work through some of those issues. Now, if they are struggling because there's something in their startup itself that they need to reduce time on, or they need to work through taking things off of their plate, I'd start there. What do we do to reduce the load, to help reduce the burden? But I think that's where I'd start, is help identify if seeking mental health or mental health professional is the thing that they need. And
that's okay. Like it is okay. Like the number of executives, I think they've done a good job in terms of releasing the stigma for mental health and to go get help when it comes to executives. I think that's okay. That's made a lot of strides. Yeah. But I think the reason apps like Pilea exist is because it's so bad for founders. It's like we're not allowed to talk about this. And just, you heard it from Jacob, and I would say that like there's no shame in going and talking to a mental health professional if you need it, right? So, Absolutely. All right, So we got a question. Jen, did I miss it?
Yes, it's in the Q&A box here. It's so Kareem is new to Startups.com, first day. He says, I have a neurotech startup. The idea is huge, and my goal is to get this from where it is at to getting funded. What's your advice in terms of where to start?
So that's a really great thing. I'm glad you asked that question. So first and foremost, you have to understand this is the big challenge when it comes to neurotech, right? And I was involved in like neurogamification, like we combine games with learning dynamics or brain dynamics and gamified learning, et cetera. And one of the first things that I realized is that everybody in the mental health, the neuroscience, the psychology world, they end up trying to defend their own stuff because it's still it's nothing set in stone. Like if you look at the world of psychology, psychology is philosophy trying to explain neuroscience, right? So you got neuroscientists that believe one thing, and you got psychologists that are trying to interpret it, and you got all this new stuff and new tools and technology coming out and helping us understand the brain. First and foremost is you're going to have to get ready for that. And, I don't know, Kareem, if this is you, maybe you want to put this in the chat or something along those lines, but, make sure you got the backup. So what I did is I went and got cognitive behavioral therapists. I got neuroscientists to back my stuff up and endorse me. So that's the first thing. So I want to make sure that my foundation is rock solid and I can point to them. The second is you have to figure out how to get results because this world is locked down. So if I have a solution that I'm going to go out and say, I can help school kids get better grades and stay more attentive in class, and I can reduce absenteeism. Well, that school is not going to let me just waltz in there and start experimenting willy-nilly. So trying to get traction and a use case and proving it out that other people would agree, because the investor is going to say, how are you going to get this into schools? And we learned the hard way is that there's so much liability. There are people whose jobs are on the line. There are financial incentives. There's regulation. That just going and getting the results is difficult, which is the reason you end up going off the beaten path. And you've got different things like, what was that brain science app that allowed you to play games? Does anybody know that one back in the day where you played the games and they said
Lumicity or something like that?
Yeah, was it Luminosity, something along those lines, right? And they made all these claims about brain science and things like that, and they had scientists, but I don't know if they're even around now. I think they're out there and they're just kind of floundering. And so being able to explain the type of traction that you have is extremely difficult when you're doing things like in neurotech. I see this comment here said, to be able to create technology to transplant entire brain organ into a person that has brain dead or neurological problem. Okay, so now we're talking like total science fiction, so now you need, and believe me, I talked to a founder the other day, just yesterday, and the world's renowned doctor who understands how to do spinal transplants, like we're talking cure paralysis, cure quadriplegics, cure paraplegics, or prevent them from being paralyzed in the first place. And I was like, how do you do that? And they said, we have the world's renowned leading medical expert who's done the trials on it. I said, well, then now we're talking, right? And so what do you do to go out and actually put that into the hands of people so they can get results and prove it? That is your biggest challenge in doing a neurotech startup, is proving the results so you get the funding, because this is going to cost a lot of money. Unless you're Elon Musk and he can just write a big fat check for Neuralink and then have them do it, and they can pay to get past all the regulatory for clinical trials. So you need a lot of money, and so you need to be able to prove it somehow to show people so you can get access to that a lot of money. That's a short answer, but more power to you, Kareem, in terms of transplanting entire brain organ. Like, that's super cool. And this is what I love about Startups.com, is we have founders coming in there. That's going to bring us to the end of the show. We can sit here and talk about the whole time. It was a really great discussion. Thank you, Q, for bringing up all those questions in the article. And then Jen, as always, watching the chat for us, making sure we run smooth. Jacob, appreciate you as always. I'm going to leave the last word to you. How do you want people to contact you? What do you got coming down the pipe? What are the opportunities? Give us the plug so people can reach out. We're going to include all your information in the description of the video. So plug away, my friend.
Yeah, I have a new guide out there. It's the productivity guide for the bootstrapped Christian entrepreneur, a group of people that I have a great heart for. It's just a bunch of tips and activities to actually help you drive your productivity over time. So it's something that's going to evolve and grow over the next 6 months as I continue to add to the guide. But would love for you guys to check it out, and you can check me or contact me on LinkedIn as well. So those are the two places you can hang out with me.
And if you're a part of Startups.com, as Jacob said, he does the founder-focused executive coaching. He leads peer groups with us and generally all-around nice guy, very approachable. You can hang out with him at any point in time. Jacob, once again, thank you very much. We're going to get you on over and over again because we're talking about important topics. Those of you in the audience, thank you for hanging out with us. And those of you watching the recording, thank you. To all the members of Startups.com. We're going to see you next time here every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.